The biting winter air whipped around Amelia as she stood outside the hospital, the falling snow mirroring the flurry of emotions inside her. Inside, Liam, her boyfriend, fussed over her, ensuring she was comfortable. A kind-faced woman in the next bed, mistaking their closeness for something more, inquired about wedding plans. Amelia managed a weak smile and a shake of her head, a bitter taste rising in her throat. She harbored a secret, a painful discovery made during a late night trip to the water cooler when Liam had forgotten to lock his phone. A girl, saved as Zoe, linked to him in a couple's profile on his mobile game. 147 days. The day she was discharged, the city was blanketed in its heaviest snowfall of the year. Liam wrapped his scarf around her neck, teasing her about resembling a bundled-up piglet. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. He crouched down, his hand in hers, searching her face with concern. Looking into his warm, seemingly sincere eyes, Amelia struggled to reconcile the tender care with the undeniable betrayal. Liam's social media was filled with pictures of her. Knowing she had rhinitis, he'd quit smoking and discouraged his friends from lighting up around her. After nights out, he would wait in the hallway for 10 minutes before coming inside, mindful of her sensitivity to the smell of alcohol. He remembered her favorite foods, her preferred brands, even her menstrual cycle with more accuracy than she did. Last month, when work prevented him from joining her ski trip to Vermont, he'd spent half an hour on the phone, meticulously outlining safety precautions. Her friends had teased him about his obvious devotion, labeling him a hopeless romantic. Yet, this same man was digitally bound to another woman, a stranger to Amelia, in a virtual relationship spanning almost 5 months. Craving spicy food, Amelia's requests for crawfish and chili crab were met with gentle persuasion and a comforting bowl of homemade porridge. Watching him busy himself in the kitchen, a thought struck her. Liam, she began, can I play that game with you sometime? He paused, then smiled, ruffling her hair. Of course, silly. Since when did you become a gamer? Unsurprisingly, Amelia fumbled with the controls. It also became clear that Liam was using a secondary, low-level account to play with her. When they lost a match, she tossed the phone onto the sofa, his reaction surprisingly mild. Want to try something else? He snuggled up to her on the couch, his warm breath tickling her ear, the scent of his fresh shower filling her senses. She instinctively pulled away. He raised an eyebrow in surprise, but simply rubbed her stomach and suggested she get some sleep. The next day, Amelia left for work before Liam woke. He sent her 2 text messages at lunchtime, just left the hospital. Don't eat anything cold. Ordered you abalone and millet porridge. Be good and eat it all. And later, were you upset yesterday? Let's catch a movie after work. Amelia stared at her phone, a knot forming in her stomach. Liam picked her up on time after work. She remained silent as they walked hand in hand to the cinema. The movie was dull, punctuated by the constant buzzing of Liam's phone. Halfway through, he excused himself to deal with an urgent matter. Amelia agreed, saying she'd head home after the film. Unbeknownst to him, she followed him out of the theater. Fortunately, he was on foot, she wouldn't have been able to keep up if he'd driven. He stopped at a nearby hospital. Liam, with his tall frame, was easy to spot in the crowd. It was equally easy to see the young woman who rushed out of a department and threw her arms around him. Liam stood passively, hands in his pockets, neither reciprocating nor pulling away. Amelia arrived home later than Liam. He sat at the dining table, watching her expectantly. She tried to brush past him, but he caught her wrist. Why have you been so unhappy lately? He kissed her neck, his lips tracing a path from behind her ear. The image of the woman clinging to him flashed through her mind, sending a shiver down her spine. Go take a shower, she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. He complied, giving her hair a playful tousle as he left. He was so unguarded around her. His phone, again, was unlocked. This time, Amelia checked his WeChat. Yesterday's game account was indeed a secondary one. After some searching, she discovered a hidden second WeChat app on his phone, logged into a different account. It was sparsely populated, with a few contacts, including some of his friends. A chat with Zoe was pinned at the top. As Amelia watched, a new message popped up from Zoe. My stomach really hurts, I feel awful. When are you going to break up with that woman? Amelia scrolled back through their conversation history, the sheer volume of messages staggering. They exchanged more words in a day than she and Liam did in a month. The day of her ski trip, the day Liam had been so solicitous of her safety, was Zoe's birthday. They had spent it together, visiting the same dog cafe that Amelia and Liam frequented. A photo showed Zoe beaming, cuddling a puppy, while Liam gazed at her tenderly. Amelia's hands and feet turned to ice. Liam had confided in Zoe about his stressful workdays, teased her about her gaming skills, even shared pictures of a new potted plant in his office. The late nights he claimed were spent working were, in reality, dates with Zoe. As the realization sank in, Amelia clutched her stomach, doubling over in pain. Her recent surgery for gastroenteritis felt like it was undoing itself. Lost in the messages, she hadn't noticed the water overflowing in the sink. The bathroom door opened behind her. What's wrong? Is your stomach hurting again? Should we go to the hospital? Liam's voice was filled with concern. He lifted her gently, the familiar scent of his body wash enveloping her. His warm hands pressed against her abdomen, momentarily easing the pain. Amelia's eyes fell on his phone, lying face down on the table. The last message she'd seen flashed in her mind. I don't have feelings for her anymore, Liam had written to Zoe. It's you I love. Amelia's coping mechanism for emotional distress, ingrained since childhood, was food. Stress eating had led to significant weight gain during her teenage years. She'd been ostracized by her classmates, the oversized school uniform, the struggles in gym class, the dresses she didn't dare wear, all constant reminders of her difference. No one had wanted to befriend her, except for Liam. They'd met as freshman class representatives, but while Amelia faded back into the background, Liam continued to shine. Smart, handsome, popular, he was constantly surrounded by admirers. Yet, they ended up in the same tutoring class, their similar academic performance often drawing comparisons from their teachers. That's how they became friends. She knew how the other boys talked about her behind her back, the cruel jokes about her weight, the snickers about her unmarriageability. But Liam had never looked at her with that kind of disdain. She fell for him one sweltering summer evening at tutoring. He'd sat beside her, a single strap of his backpack slung over his shoulder, his smile bright and genuine. Just checked the scores. You beat me again by 1 point, he'd said. So smart. Lend me your brain? Liam hadn't known she'd secretly looked at his college application and meticulously calculated her own choices to ensure they ended up at the same university. At their graduation party, a wealthy, beautiful girl confessed her feelings for Liam. Amelia sat silently as the crowd cheered them on, convinced he would accept. He didn't. He politely declined. As the party wound down, Amelia retreated to a corner, her habitual solitude drawing her in. But Liam, as always, found her. He sat beside her, chin resting on his hand, his eyes half closed. She knew he was looking at her, but she couldn't meet his gaze. After a long silence, his soft voice broke the stillness. I like you, he'd murmured. Do you want to give us a try? Later, she'd asked him why he'd chosen her, with all her perceived imperfections. He'd simply laughed, pulling her close. You're always adorable to me, he'd said. Liam was an enigma. His moral compass seemed skewed, his mind full of unconventional ideas. His infidelity, while painful, didn't entirely surprise her. After they started dating, Amelia lost weight, experimented with fashion, joined university clubs, and discovered a hidden social confidence. She'd even received a confession from a younger student, which she'd declined. She believed fidelity was paramount in a relationship. Liam, clearly, did not. One night, standing in her kitchen, devouring the last piece of cake, Amelia chuckled humorlessly. She still hadn't conquered her emotional eating. Yet, she hadn't gained weight, in fact, she'd even lost a few pounds. She dismissed it as a side effect of her surgery. The messages from Zoe were still fresh in her mind. Liam hadn't come home that night. She called him, and he answered almost immediately. Where are you? She asked. The sound of wind rushed through the phone. Just finished work. Heading home now. Miss me? His voice was husky, as though he'd just woken up. If she hadn't confirmed with his colleagues that he wasn't working late, she might have believed him. Was he with Zoe, soothing her after their argument, spinning lies about working overtime? Liam, Amelia said, her voice betraying her emotions. I'm coming to get you. A pause followed, then a light chuckle. He gave her an address, adding, it's cold out. Dress warmly, and be careful. Liam's university wasn't far from their apartment, an easy walk. The streets were deserted, the only signs of life flickering from the night market near the campus. Liam stood at the edge of the market, waiting for her. He always stood out in a crowd, his presence commanding attention. Now, as she walked towards him, rehearsing the words she planned to say, she realized he was inherently restless, a spirit that couldn't be contained. He pulled her into a tight embrace, his hand resting on her head. Why the furrowed brow? He asked. That unhappy? Liam, did he even know why she was unhappy? The flickering lights of the market danced across his face, momentarily obscuring the hurt in her eyes. The carefully constructed script in her mind shattered. Life was like a film reel, constantly splicing together unexpected scenes. The screech of tires, the burst of flames, Liam shouting her name. She'd gone to him that night to break up with him. He'd lied about working late to appease Zoe. He'd told Zoe he no longer had feelings for Amelia. As the runaway delivery truck barreled towards them, Liam had instinctively pushed her out of the way. The spreading pool of blood seared itself into Amelia's memory. She'd crawled towards him frantically, but he'd simply smiled, reaching out to stroke her hair. Glad you're okay, he'd whispered. Liam, tell me, is it really that hard to love just one person? Liam's injuries were far more severe than Amelia had initially thought. The sheer volume of blood should have been a warning. He wouldn't be waking up the next morning unscathed. He slipped into a coma, remaining unconscious for days in the ICU. During this time, Amelia finally unlocked his phone. The fingerprint sensor proved remarkably convenient. She found herself obsessively rereading the messages between Liam and Zoe, each word, each expression of affection afresh. Wound to her heart. While Liam lay unconscious, Zoe's messages continued to pour in. There's a new flower shop downstairs, it's so pretty. Liam, do you have classes this afternoon? Want to catch a movie after work? Then, the growing anxiety, hello? Why aren't you replying? Are you there? Liam? Something's happened. I went to your school, but you weren't there. Did something happen to you? Liam. You wouldn't just not reply to me. Liam, I miss you so much. Lying on the cot in the hospital room, Amelia scrolled through the messages, Zoe's increasingly frantic texts a stark counterpoint to Liam's silence. She stumbled to the bathroom, violently ill. Liam, how could you? This girl, Zoe, she was hopelessly in love with him. The nurses commented on Amelia's deteriorating complexion, suggesting a full medical checkup. Collecting her test results, Amelia saw a young woman in a white dress standing outside Liam's room. A strange premonition washed over her. Hesitantly, she called out, Zoe? The woman turned, her eyes wide and innocent. They found a ramen shop near the hospital to talk. In the quiet afternoon lull, Zoe picked listlessly at her noodles. You know. I'm Liam's girlfriend, right? Amelia asked. Zoe simply shrugged. Yeah. But, she continued, a strand of hair falling across her shoulder, love doesn't follow a timetable. She offered a strained smile. Besides, you're not married. The provocation was clear. Knowing he's in a relationship and still getting involved? You two deserve each other, Amelia muttered, her stomach churning. Zoe laughed, the confidence of someone holding all the cards radiating from her. So, why don't you just give him to me? Unless you want to make a scene? Crazy women are so unattractive. Don't be so desperate. Zoe's eyes gleamed with triumph. Convinced that victory was within her grasp. Perhaps she was right. Amelia's own test results flashed through her mind. She stood up, her gaze fixed on the table. Then, she said quietly, tell him when he wakes up. I'm not his girlfriend anymore. You are. Zoe, whose real name was Chloe, seemed surprised by Amelia's quick concession. As they returned to the hospital, the doctor informed them that Liam had regained consciousness. Chloe rushed to his bedside. Liam, always perceptive, understood the situation the moment he saw Amelia and Chloe together. He looked at Amelia, his gaze holding the same inexplicable tenderness, as if she were the only person in the room. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Amelia took a deep breath and finally spoke the words she'd intended to say earlier. "Liam," she said, her voice steady. "Let's break up." A long silence followed. Liam's expression held no surprise. He simply chuckled. "I should have wiped my phone before the accident," he said. This was the Liam she knew. In the past, she would have raged, demanded explanations, thrown things, confronted Chloe. Now, she simply turned to leave. "So," he asked calmly, "now that we've broken up, can we still be friends?" Amelia shook her head and walked out of the room. Liam didn't know that there wouldn't be any after for her. 6 hours before Liam woke up, 20 minutes before meeting Chloe, Amelia had received her test results. She'd attributed her recent weight loss to a sudden change in metabolism, the frequent stomach pains to post-surgical complications, the concerned nurses, the late-night bouts of vomiting. The diagnosis was gastric cancer, advanced stage. The early stages were asymptomatic, the pain only manifesting later. The doctor's words echoed in her ears, "Are you here alone? I'm not trying to scare you, but to be blunt, we've caught this late. If we don't act quickly, you might only have a few months. We need to admit you immediately. Contact your family. We need to decide on surgery or chemotherapy as soon as possible." Amelia's stunned silence prompted a sigh from the doctor. He patted her shoulder. "Don't be too anxious. We specialize in this area, and we have many success stories." Amelia spent the rest of the morning numbly sitting in the hospital corridor. Why hadn't they detected anything during her previous surgery? Why now? Why her? Hadn't she suffered enough? Was life itself now being taken from her? The doctor had asked about her family. Her mother had passed away a year after her graduation. Her extended family was estranged, locked in a bitter feud over her grandfather's estate. For years, all she'd had was Liam. He was right, passion does fade. That's why he'd fallen out of love with her. They'd been together for so long, perhaps they'd both forgotten what love was, whether they even still loved each other. The hospital corridor bustled with activity, but Amelia felt disconnected, her very existence precarious. It had been a long time since she'd thought about her mother. Now, her mother's face swam before her eyes. "Take me with you, Mom. Please, take me away." Tears streamed down Amelia's face. A kind woman, mistaking her for a grieving relative, offered a tissue and a comforting shoulder. "It's okay, dear. Don't cry," she murmured. "My son, he was 11, he swallowed a box of thumbtacks after an argument. I regret it so much now. All the things I should have done differently, all the times I shouldn't have lost my temper. Life is hard for everyone. That's why we need to cherish the people we have." Clutching the test results, Amelia realized she had no one. She remembered a conversation with Liam about who would die first. She had said she wanted to go before him. He'd agreed, pressing his forehead against hers. "I'm yours. Until you die, I'll always be by your side." In a daze, she walked down the stairs towards his room. How ironic, even then, even after discovering his infidelity, her instinct was to check on him, to ask his opinion on her treatment options. But then, standing on the landing, watching Chloe standing outside his door, she knew Liam wasn't hers anymore. He'd already let her go. That autumn, as the last leaves fell, Liam broke up with Chloe. It seemed like a trivial matter to him, but Chloe was devastated. He calmly blocked her number as her messages continued to flood in. The honking of cars from the busy street below drew his attention. He remembered pulling Amelia back from the path of an oncoming truck 2 years ago. 2 years since she'd left him. Liam had never doubted his love for Amelia. In fact, he'd never felt so intensely about anyone. The aftermath of their breakup had been brutal. He'd resented her, then missed her desperately. That's why he ended things with Chloe. He knew it would be difficult, incredibly difficult, but he wanted Amelia back. How had she been these past 2 years? Was her stomach still bothering her? Did she still skip breakfast, still pad barefoot across cold floors? He thought of her constantly, her memory haunting his lonely nights, her image superimposed over Chloe's. Always one to follow his impulses, Liam decided to act. He tried adding her back on WeChat, but his request went unanswered. Her profile picture and name were different. She'd blocked him everywhere after their breakup, a clean, decisive break. He remembered his parting words, "Can we still be friends?" She'd shaken her head. The road to winning her back might be long, but Liam wasn't ready to concede defeat. He knew Amelia, knew her soft heart. She was easy to manipulate, perhaps a consequence of her single-parent upbringing. A little kindness, a smile. And she was putty in his hands. With his WeChat request unanswered, Liam tried other avenues. She seemed to have left the city. Despite his extensive network, he couldn't find any trace of her. He finally managed to contact one of her old friends, only to be met with a torrent of abuse before being blocked again. "May you spend the rest of your life drowning in regret, you scumbag," she'd written. He raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. If he could just see her again, he knew he could win her back. He knew her too well, knew what she liked, knew how to make her happy. Their shared history ran deep, the reason for his persistent longing. He refused to believe she had completely forgotten him. It was a Saturday night reunion, a gathering of former high school classmates visiting Liam's university. The alcohol flowed, and conversations drifted to shared memories. Liam, never a strong drinker, nursed his drink, half listening to the boisterous banter. Then, a name caught his ear, jolting him from his stupor. "Hey, remember that classmate of ours? Such a shame, so young." Another voice chimed in. "Yeah, I went to her funeral earlier this year. Stomach cancer, I think. So sad. Heard she didn't have any family left. Died all alone. Young. Stomach cancer. Funeral." The words struck Liam like a physical blow. He lurched to his feet, the room suddenly silent, all eyes on him. His head swam. It had to be the alcohol, a trick of his ears, a cruel coincidence of names. Amelia? Gone? Dead? A year ago? He would never see her again? The realization that she was truly gone, that their paths would never cross again, hit him with the force of a tidal wave. He frantically searched for any trace of her, desperate to disprove the news, to find evidence that it was all a cruel joke, a conspiracy to torment him. But there was nothing, only an address. And a headstone. He stood before her grave, the wind whispering through the trees, the vastness of the landscape mirroring the emptiness in his heart. She was gone, lost to him before he even had a chance to say goodbye. Memories, once a source of comfort, now clawed at him, each insignificant detail magnified into an unbearable weight. He knelt before her grave from sunrise to sunset, the futility of his remorse washing over him. There would be no forgiveness, no absolution, no one to hear his apologies. He hadn't even known she was gone. He, too, had been abandoned. He locked himself away, drowning his grief in bottle after bottle of beer. Only in the hazy depths of intoxication could he see her, her image flickering before him, crouching down, her hand resting on his head, her voice echoing in his ears, "You really are a strange person. You were the one who stopped loving me. Why are you crying now?" He spiraled downwards, seeking solace in the company of strangers, the fleeting oblivion of alcohol a temporary reprieve. One night, after yet another drinking binge, he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. He looked at himself for a long time, then smashed his fist into the glass. Blood trickled down his hand, the sting a stark contrast to the numbness in his soul. His fragmented reflection stared back at him. "Why?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Why, Liam? Why couldn't he love someone properly? Why did he throw her away, so convinced he could have her back whenever he wanted?" He realized now that it wasn't that he hadn't loved her, but that his love had been so deeply ingrained, so taken for granted, that he hadn't recognized its true value until it was gone. He picked up a shard of glass and drew a large X across his face, the blood a visceral manifestation of his self-loathing. His friends, alarmed by his self-destructive behavior, rushed him to the hospital. One of them clapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, feeling down? Let's go find some fun." He became a fixture in the city's bars, his scarred face, a testament to his inner turmoil, strangely attractive to the women he met. "I love a man with a story," one of them purred, tracing the line of his scar. Women and alcohol became his twin escapes, a desperate attempt to numb the pain of memories he couldn't erase. A rumor circulated that all the women he pursued bore a striking resemblance to Amelia. Some in personality, others in appearance. It was a futile attempt to alleviate the crushing weight of his grief, a temporary balm that ultimately failed. One night, looking at a woman who closely resembled Amelia, a wave of nausea washed over him. He fled to the bathroom, retching violently. Chloe found Liam holed up in his apartment, surrounded by empty beer bottles. He opened the door, reeking of alcohol, his eyes scanning her from head to toe before he moved to slam the door shut. Chloe stopped him. "If I hadn't come looking for you," she demanded, "how long would you have continued this self-destructive spiral?" Even in his, there was an undeniable magnetism about him. Liam raised an eyebrow, a sneer twisting his lips. "Are you still on about this? Still on about this? Liam. We were together for 2 years. Chloe exploded. "How long were you with her?" "A few months. And you're destroying yourself over her? What am I then?" Liam stared at her, a long, heavy silence hanging in the air before he finally spoke, his voice laced with weariness. "Come in." Chloe recognized the apartment instantly. It was the one he'd shared with Amelia. Nothing had changed, except for the scattering of empty beer cans on the table. "Chloe," Liam began, his voice low and haunting, "do you know why I added you on that game? Maybe she doesn't even remember," he continued, "but the first gaming account I ever set up for her, her nickname was Zoe, too. I had a fight with Amelia that day. Calling you Zoe was like calling her. My feelings for her were fading. You were like a new version of her. That's why I found you." "Interesting." Chloe stared at him, speechless, as he dissected their relationship with chilling detachment. She grabbed a beer can and hurled it at him. "You're a monster." She remembered her first encounter with Amelia, the smug confidence with which she'd declared that hysterical women were unattractive. Now she was on the verge of hysteria herself. She'd been a substitute, a stand-in for 3 years? Who was Liam really seeing when he looked at her? His dead ex-girlfriend? What was she then? The answer was painfully clear. She thought she'd won, but who had really had the last laugh? A dead woman? Sensing Chloe's impending meltdown, Liam coughed, ushering her towards the door. Her shouts and sobs faded as he closed it behind her. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. Today was an important day. He didn't want anyone to disturb him. Christmas Eve. The streets were filled with festive cheer. It was the first time Liam had left his apartment in weeks. He showered, shaved, and dressed carefully. December 24th. The day he'd confessed his feelings to Amelia. The city glittered with lights, the streets thronged with couples. Lost in thought, he bumped into someone. "Here, mister, have these flowers. If you have someone you like, you should tell them." A young boy thrust a large bouquet into his arms. It was a promotional event, encouraging random strangers to declare their love. Liam stared at the flowers, a wave of longing washing over him. If only she were here. Guilt gnawed at him. "Excuse me, would you sell me those flowers?" A voice interrupted his reverie. A young man with a cheerful smile and curly hair stood before him. "I made my girlfriend mad. I want to get her flowers, but you know, it's impossible to find any on Christmas Eve." It was a young couple in love. Liam handed over the flowers, refusing payment, but the young man pressed a bill into his hand. He thanked Liam and hurried away. Liam stood there, remembering buying flowers for Amelia, filling their new apartment, even their fridge, with roses. He'd loved her so much then. Loved her enough to not hurt her. Liam felt tormented by the memories. What if he hadn't done those things? What if he hadn't betrayed her? If he'd stayed by her side, would they have spent her last Christmas together? He ducked into another bar, drinking steadily, the familiar pattern repeating itself. He drank until he was sick, until the world blurred, and he saw her again. A woman who looked just like her walked past. He pushed through the crowd, desperate to reach her, but she vanished into the throng. Another hallucination. This time, however, his pursuit had unintended consequences. "Hey, watch where you're going, asshole." A burly man grabbed him by the collar. Liam had trained in self-defense, but alcohol had weakened him. He was slammed against a wall, then dragged into an alley. The festive noise of the street drowned out his struggles. "Got any money? Let's see what you've got." The man rifled through his pockets, finding only a ring. Liam's eyes widened. He lunged for it, but the man held it out of reach, dangling it tauntingly. The ring. He'd bought it with Amelia. It was the only thing he had left of her. He struggled, cursing, attracting the attention of the other men. They closed in, raining blows upon him. It was a senseless act of violence, fueled by alcohol and boredom. Liam curled up, protecting the ring as it was tossed aside, discarded as worthless. He clutched it to his chest, a precious treasure. Shit, is he dead? Whatever, let's go. The men finally left. Liam lay there, his body aching, his breath shallow. He laughed. It was cold. If he stayed there, would he simply close his eyes and never wake up? The Christmas parade continued, oblivious to the scene in the alley. Liam didn't see the young man with the flowers approaching a young woman in the next street. A young woman with familiar eyes. "Hey," the young man said, "guess where I got these?" From Liam. "Your ex-boyfriend, I guess." "Oh, he's here too?" "He seems to still be in love with you. But he thinks you're dead. He looks rough." The woman played with the petals, shrugging indifferently. "My friend wanted to play a prank on him. Then everyone else got involved. I'm living abroad now. They even got me a fake gravestone to prove I was dead. So ridiculous. I'm not dead. I'm very much alive. The doctor said it was a miracle I survived. I was almost scared they'd jinx me. Anyway, whatever Liam thinks doesn't really matter to me anymore. I need to move on. Honestly, after facing death, he doesn't seem that important." She stretched, holding the bouquet aloft. "Thanks, though. The flowers are beautiful." The clock struck midnight. Snow began to fall. The city lights twinkled against the backdrop of a star-studded sky. The sound of jingle bells ushered in the new year. The end.